For this edition of AAM Media Matters, I want to welcome Angelina Eng, Vice President of Measurement, Addressability, and Data Center for the Interactive Advertising Bureau, also known as the IAB. She's also a member of AAM's Board of Directors. Welcome, Angelina.
Thank you for having me.
Today we're discussing retail media and the development and impact of the IAB MRC Retail Media Measurement Guidelines, which were released last year. Angelina, could you give an overview of the guidelines, what they are, who they're for, and why they're important?
When we first, approached this endeavor, we knew that there were several challenges when it came to feedback from the buy side regarding inconsistencies across various different retail media network organizations. It was hard to compare apples to apples. There were inconsistent metrics, a lack of transparency on methodology, and some of the metrics that were being reported. So we took on this endeavor over 2 years ago to bring together these different stakeholders to standardize the way that we approach measurement in the space.
What specific metrics do the guidelines emphasize for evaluating the effectiveness of in-store advertising?
Oh, I think there's a lot to cover there, but it is really around consistency. We also, when it came to how is an impression measured, how are clicks also measured, but I think the nuance is really around outcomes and trying to address attribution and incrementality between offline and online. So a lot of the focus was on ROAS and incrementality, and how to ensure that there's approaches to standardizing outcomes. But I think the main thing also is understanding that when it comes to incrementality and attribution, what is the foundation in order to make that leap to attribution, and that is around making sure that ad impressions are filtered out for IVT and sophisticated invalid traffic, bots, and there's a level of brand safety and that minimum viewability, so that we can feel confident that when an ad is seen and these retail media networks want to measure outcomes, that is actually seen by a human or had the opportunity to be seen by a human.
What are the most common challenges in measuring effectiveness across different in-store, digital, and other ad formats?
Everyone wants to do it in a different way. Everyone has their own point of view and approach to how they're delivering ads and what they can and can't measure. As you know, there are several different ad tech platforms out there. So each ad tech platform has their own way of measuring, impressions and clicks and incrementality and so forth. And part of the challenge is, especially from the buy side, is aggregating all these data points across all these different sources and making sure that you're able to compare apples to apples.
What role can organizations like the Alliance for Audited Media play in supporting the adoption of these guidelines?
Well, as you know, you had mentioned I'm on the board of directors, and really proud of the work that you guys are doing and really helping to, certify and audit some of these platforms. And, the work that you guys are doing in terms, especially in the programmatic space, and working with the IAB Tech Lab to ensure that publishers and retail media networks are setting up their systems and their platforms correctly in a way that meets industry standards. That's I'm very proud of the work that you guys are doing, and also very proud in being part of it. It's something that continues to help develop trust in our industry, which is much needed.
As the industry becomes more complex, how do you see the guidelines evolving?
I think what you're going to see more of is retail media networks expanding into other channels, such as gaming and podcasts and such, and AR and VR. And those are things that we at IAB are already focused on developing standards, and some of them we've already developed, like the podcast technical standards, the AR, VR, creative standards and such. So I think with retail media networks, they're going to continue to grow in terms of opportunities for brands and creating great experience, and especially in the immersive space. I think that's where there's a lot of potential. So imagine, being able to, walk through a game and then shop and provide reporting back to an advertiser of someone actually doing virtual shopping in a VR environment and purchasing something, and being able to credit that. I think it's gonna help elevate not only the retail media networks, but also other channels and categories that haven't had the opportunity to really get uh, a, a piece of the pie when it comes to budget allocations.
What is one thing you would like the industry to know about the
Okay.
standards?
I think it's really important uh, that when it comes to assessing a partner and selecting a partner, to ask the tough questions around their approaches to measurement and are they compliant. I think that it's really important that we push towards adopting these industry standards, and therefore that means asking the questions: are you accredited? If you're not, why aren't you? Are you in the process? What is your methodology? How are you handling data? What are your data policies? And how are you ensuring that consumer data is being protected? I think that's where it's important that we as an industry really push not only the retail media networks, but also the data platforms, your measurement solutions around adopting these standards, so that when you're aggregating this data and trying to assess incrementality and attribution, that you're able to, at least with confidence, be able to compare apples to apples, or green apples to red apples, but they're still apples, right?
It's a good analogy. Well, thank you, Angelina, for sharing your insights with AAM Media Matters. This has been great.
Well, thank you for having me.